Hello, hope the coffee's on the go, and welcome to Benjy's Cafe Podcast. My guest this week is the director, the wonderful Damian Sandys. Damian is artistic producer of one of the UK's leading production companies, UK Productions. His theatre credits include Tim Firth and Gary Barlow's hit musical, Calendar Girls, the UK and Ireland tour of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and associate director on the Broadway hit Khaled Hosseini's play, The Kite Runner. Damian was nominated for Best Director for his production of Cinderella at the 2017 Great British Pantomime Awards, and has directed and produced over 50 productions at Edinburgh Fringe, including the award-winning Shakespeare for Breakfast. He is also director of Neighbours, the celebration tour celebrating the iconic Australian soap, and is creative director of the annual What's On Stage Awards. In this episode, Damian shares his joy of directing and theatre, how reaching out can lead to opportunity, and making time for self-care, plus his involvement with Neighbours, the celebration tour, and life on Broadway.
The Broadway audiences and community were amazing, and the noise that comes from them in a great way, it's like they will let you know how they are feeling in this show. If they find it funny, they will laugh. If they find it sad, you will hear them. There's something that is actually pretty thrilling about that.
He's one of the busiest and kindest men in theatre. Welcome to Benjy's Cafe Podcast, Damian Sandys. Good morning, Damian. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you. That's a bit like This Is Your Life.
It's so lovely for you to join me on Benjy's Cafe Podcast. Has it been a nice morning for you? I know you've got a little coffee on the go. Is that your kind of kickstart into a productive and happy day?
100%, yes. I kind of quite like a little bit of time to myself before hitting the day. So it is always nice coffee, a little bit of a check-in with Neighbours first thing. Episodes drop at 7 a.m. So I have my breakfast with it. And then I feel ready to hit the day after that.
It's lovely, isn't it? Just have a bit of time to yourself to ease into the day. I'd rather get up early and just have time for my coffee, just to think, right, how am I feeling? Just plan my day in my head. And I just think it's lovely then. Then you're kind of ready to go, aren't you, and tackle what's ahead.
Absolutely. You found your stride. You're okay. You're ready to talk to people.
And I've got to ask you, Damian, my goodness, Neighbours. I remember coming home. I must be pushing 70 odd now, so we're talking a long time ago. But I remember we were allowed home from school for our lunch break. And of course, Neighbours was twice daily. You've been in Australia. You direct Neighbours, the celebration tour. Firstly, how did that start, and the popularity of that show? I mean, it's iconic. I remember Suddenly Angry Anderson, Scott and Charlene's wedding, so many moments. I saw Harold Bishop in Panto at the Hippodrome in Birmingham, so I loved it, and it's been a huge part of your life and still is, isn't it?
It has. So I have watched from very early on because my grandmother got me into it age 6. So when she was looking after me, she would watch it at lunchtime. And so I would sit and watch it with her. And it stayed with me ever since. Obviously, there was that 80s golden period. But then sort of it's always been something that sort of I've followed with me. I went to Ramsay Street for the first time in 2005. And so then many years later to work with the show officially, but then also in so many other capacities, kind of come across cast members, and I've worked with some on Panto, directing them in those, and on and off screen, they are just the nicest people, and so it is amazing. And over the years, and particularly this latter few, I've kind of really got to know Melbourne as well, and it's so nice to kind of someone said to me that a home is where you feel comfortable and you can make wherever, and it's very usual for people to actually have 3 or 4 homes like that, and Melbourne is very much one of those places for me. So I just got back from pretty much a month there, which was just glorious and heavenly.
Melbourne, it is a beautiful city. It's just a very vibrant, buzzy place, isn't it? It's like feel good, and I love that.
There's always things going on, and one of the beauty of it is you can just wander. You can pick, right, this is the area I'm going to go around today, and just head there and then just wander, and you will find such brilliant things.
That's what I do at Pineapple Studios, Damian. I just head Head in, register, have a little wander.
Absolutely.
So, how did you get involved with working for Neighbours?
So it's a bit of lucky coincidence, really, that pre-COVID there was going to be a show to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the show at the Adelphi. The person whose brainchild it was, I sort of knew through the Twitterverse of Neighbours fans, and uh, we were just talking bits about it, and then sort of obviously COVID happened, it got delayed. By the time Australians could come over to the country, the show had been cancelled. And so the plans were for there to be a farewell tour, which started off as 3 dates. And because they sold out immediately, it stretched to 15 dates across the UK. And I've done a lot of one night events in theatres and so on. And so I was still talking to Joe about this and the different experiences I had. And he said, you know what, you should write to our producer because I think you'll be really useful on this show. And so I sent this letter in just kind of going, hi, this is me, this is what I've done. Oh, by the way, I'm also a huge Neighbours fan. And it turned out that the producer was someone that I met at the Edinburgh Festival 20 years ago
Wow.
when he was in a show. I was producing and directing a show up there, and we actually used to hang out all the time. We were still in contact, but we hadn't seen each other for a very long time.
Mm.
Um, and it turned into a really surreal week because so I had a Zoom with him the day before our Broadway press night of the Kite Runner. So I'm in New York. I've been there for 8 weeks. Already this week is kind of just so surreal and like the thing that dreams are made of. And then I find myself kind of having this chat about Neighbours and the tour and so on. And it's just like, this is actually bonkers. And it was really lovely timing though, because about 10 days later was the airing of Neighbours' final episode at that time. Fast forward to beginning of November, I think it is, and I was on the train going into town for something, just a very average morning, and I
Yeah.
get a phone call to say it's back. And I'm like, what's back? And they're like, Neighbours, it's coming back. And I screamed whilst I was sat new to train. Everyone turns to look at me, and then I go, I can't let anyone know what I'm
Oh.
excited about because it's not public. And so I was like, nothing to see, nothing to see. I'm very normal while having absolute heart palpitations.
Yeah.
So our farewell tour got rebranded the Celebration Tour. And then we had this amazing sort of 3 weeks in the UK, taking it around, sold out venues and mammoth, mammoth places, like 3 nights at the Palladium and Glasgow Armadillo. It just incredible. And the atmosphere in all of these places was so special, just filled with people that loved the show. And what was lovely about it were the a lot of people came with generations of their family to see it because that's how they knew the show. And so it was just a really special time. And then we also got to take the show to Australia, do it
Oh.
in Melbourne, and that ended up being the day before the first day back of filming. And so then got to go along to that day, which was just so special, and kind of everything sort of went from there. Yeah, it's a lovely thing to be a very small part of, and just to see as well, like you'll know this, the amount of work that
Oh.
goes into a machine like a continuing drama. Like it is so complicated. The scheduling, the way those actors and the production team hold about 20 episodes in their head at
Yeah.
once and filming it all out of order. It's such a logistical feat, and that side like fascinated me so much. And continuing dramas just it like themselves fascinate me because every other medium there is of storytelling, the story finishes. It comes to an end. And whereas in continuing drama, it's always, but where does this story lead? What happened?
Yeah, yeah.
How does it continue? Like, that is a really special form of art.
Yeah, because it is a long game, but there's no end game. Interestingly,
Yeah.
that's such an interesting point, Damien. Bill Ward was on series one of the pod. Who, you know, Bill very well.
Yeah.
He's worked with us, with both of us, and starred in
Mm.
Coronation Street for years, Emmerdale for years. Wonderful guy, wonderful photographer. My goodness. But he was saying that, of course, he didn't know where his character's line of narrative was heading, and often, the writing team would wait to see what he would bring to the role before they
Yeah.
decided where the character's heading to. So you're completely right. Everyone's kind of in the moment, but not quite knowing where that moment's going to lead to. And you're so right. The logistics of planning a long-running soap or drama, it is mind-blowing. And also credit to these actors on these projects who, they have to be in the moment, of course, but they don't know where what they're playing is heading to. I find that fascinating too.
Yeah, completely. Jackie Woodburn, who plays Susan Kennedy, always says sort of like, one day you can be playing Medea, the next you're putting the bins out. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. What I loved about your story becoming part of the Neighbours juggernaut, Damien, was two things which I think are so important from being yourself, from making that connection at the Edinburgh Festival. I think that's so important because people remember what you're like in a work situation, in a life situation. I think that's wonderful. And of course, you're a wonderful person, so I've no surprise that you remembered in a positive, happy, fun, talented light. And also, just having the thought of, you know what, I'm going to write a letter. Let's see where that happens, because I say it time and time again. You just don't know, do you? What's the harm in putting the feelers out?
Absolutely. So many key things in my life have happened because I wrote a letter, and it's always worth it. Like back in the day, before I directed my first show, I was in the lead up to directing a production of Guys and Dolls at university, which is the first thing I ever directed. And Cameron McIntosh came to give a talk about producing. And this is so funny to look back on now. But just at the end of the talk, I just waited till he was standing by himself, and I went over and just started talking to him about his shows. He had just closed Martin Guerre, which is one of my favourite shows.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
talked all about that, and he was amazing. Lots of little gems of things. And after about 15 minutes, I needed to go, and I just said to him, do you do any kind of work placements or anything? And he said, write to my office, put this name at the top, and that way the letter will end up on my desk and I'll remember you. And I was like, sure, of course it will. But
Yeah.
I thought, obviously I'm going to do it anyway. So next they did it, and this is ye olden times, so definite old-fashioned letter, post it, and so on. And a week later, I had a letter back from his office inviting me to the first day of rehearsals for his new musical, The Witches of Eastwick. And what was amazing is he then brought me back in at all the key stages of the rehearsal process. And until that point, I'd never really considered how a musical became a musical. I was just looking at the end product.
Yeah.
And that show was fascinating to watch, because I think over the course of the rehearsal process and previews, something like 27 songs, I think it was. It's 17 or 27, either a massive exaggeration there or not. Seven is definitely important. When in and out, they were chopped, they moved acts, they moved who sang them, just constant refining of this piece. And I just found that incredible to watch from the sidelines and see how it was all put together. And there's little things from just the putting together of those characters that I remember so clearly now, 25 years on, and that are things that kind of go into my working practice. And it was such an incredible cast. And, from that cast as well, so many of those people are still really, really close friends now.
Yeah.
So it was something that gave a lot to me. And similarly, like several years later, the What's on Stage Awards, one of those friends from Witches of Eastwick, Sarah Lark, who you know,
Oh, dear Sarah.
indeed, one of my besties.
Yes, yeah.
So just after she was part of I'd Do Anything, she was asked to perform in the What's on Stage Awards concert. Um, and I knew the producer of it vaguely.
Yeah.
So I just dropped him an email saying, sort of, do you need any help on this event? I'd love to volunteer. Just, I'll do anything. And he was like, yeah, an extra pair of hands would be great. And so that was 2009. And then I've done every What's on Stage Awards since.
Yeah.
So I started as assistant director, moved to production coordinator and associate director, and then for the last 3, 4 years have been co-producing and creative director on it as well. And this all comes just from sending that one email, just on the off chance that it might lead somewhere. Of course, there have been lots of emails and letters that haven't quite worked out.
Yeah.
But I think it really, really is. It's always worth the ask because you never know.
Yeah. So you're absorbing how the cast were working in the rehearsal room for Witches, how different actors work, approach a book or, a song. Was it there, do you think, that you started to understand just the director's role in orchestrating the different departments within a production and how to deal with different sets of people, being calm, listening, and adapting to different personalities? Because I guess as a director, that's huge, isn't it? Mounting a production.
It's like you are often fielding a lot of things, a lot of people, and often in very short time frames, like particularly panto.
Yeah.
And it is something sort of that you develop as you go on, and definitely I got a sense of it on that huge juggernaut of a show. I think as well, though, a lot of it comes from stuff a bit earlier. So I did a lot of youth theatre when I was young, and I now run that same youth theatre. And I think that just gave me so many different aspects and really put me of understanding. And for young people, we were given a lot of freedom to sort of get involved and so on. And so sort of at that time, like in my last year of being in there, I was the student rep on the committee of the youth theatre. So I was in this position of sort of sitting with adults, like grown adults, and sort of being involved in their discussion and putting cases forward on behalf of all the members. When I left university, so it turned out that through circumstances, I ended up taking a job in Edinburgh as a teacher in a boarding school, teaching English and drama. And they made me head of drama. So working in a place like that kind of gave you a lot more experience of dealing with a lot of things and structures and people. And so by the time I got to the end of my third year of teaching, I knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And the beautiful thing had been, it gave me long holidays, and every holiday I was going into a theatre doing something. I think I was down to 3 Edinburgh festivals by that time. And I just didn't know how to make that leap. And so I signed on for my 4th year. And then that summer leading into the 4th year, a producer saw one of my shows at the Edinburgh Festival and offered me a directing job. And I was like, oh, now what do I do?
Yeah.
And it was for a very long running show. And they were I was very lucky that they agreed to hold it open for me. So I went back, started my 4th year, handed in my notice for the end of the year, finished it off, and then moved back to London. And again, so one of those moments looking back now, effectively, I made that leap and I handed in my notice for this full-time job for what was essentially a 7-week contract. But the moment I did it, I was just like, this is absolutely the right thing to be doing. And that 7-week contract did actually become a year and a half working on that show, pretty much. So kind of all worked out in the end.
Yeah.
But I just remember having such a strong pull of going, yeah, this is it. I've got to do this.
The confidence just to act on that impulse, and not impulse, but that feeling of like, this change feels right in this time of my life. Because if you can, if your life allows you to act on those impulses, doing something that you know deep down is right and makes you happy, that's a really joyous place to be in, I think.
Absolutely.
When I worked with you, I thought, when the first thoughts I had of you, Damien, was like, this guy is so like mature beyond his years, just the way you dealt with people, the way you sort of led and drove a rehearsal room. But also what really shone was your kindness. You're such a
Yeah.
kind chap, Damien. I just wondered, is that a trait you think that you get from your parents, do you think?
I think so. And I think sort of, I think you, there's so much that you absorb, from going on. And I come from a large family, and in terms of sort of the extended brood, like my mum was one of six. I had sort of my generation on that side, there are 15 grandchildren, and my dad's side was also similarly very close. And so sort of growing up, like I just remember huge family get-togethers all the time. My mum is a teacher and sort of has this great love of kids and children and family. So that's always been something that's very present. My dad has also been someone who is always busy and on like every committee under the sun. And what was lovely was so my introduction to theatre is actually because of my dad, because I he used to do amateur pantos at my primary school, and I remember sitting and learning his lines with him, and would then go and watch it and sit on the front row and recite every word as it was happening, and going on. And so then when I was a teenager, I went to youth theatre and I did my first year in it. Absolutely loved it, like complete life changing for me. But at the end of that first year, they were looking for someone to come onto their committee as a treasurer. So my dad volunteered, and then I left the youth theatre to go to university, and he stayed on as treasurer and actually stayed there for 10 years.
Oh,
And I think it was there was something really lovely about seeing sort of a place that was so special for me, for my dad to get involved in that, and then also sort of make great friends amongst the committee himself and do it, was something that was really lovely to see. So I think sort of, yes, there's a lot of aspects of my life and my personality that have been hugely affected by them. People are exciting. People are wonderful.
yeah.
And what we do, it's such a lucky position to be in, to work with so many people and constantly changing people as well. There's a beautiful thing about starting a show, and here you are, here's another wave of people to do. And I think it there's something really special about being able to sort of enjoy that and explore it. And there's often that cliche of sort of doing a show and going, oh yeah, we're a family, but so often it is true, because you often spend more time with those people than you do your actual family, particularly at Christmas time. And being a family doesn't necessarily mean you always get on. It's not all sweetness and light the whole time.
Yeah, yeah.
There's an intensity about what you're doing together, and a shared interest, a shared coming together and wanting it to be the best thing it can be, which brings with it a bit of a vulnerability. And that's why in a short space of time you can make very quick, immediate bonds with each other. And how brilliant is that we're in an area of work that allows you to do that, rather than be sort of in an office with the same people for 40 years,
And it is, we're very lucky, we're not only making collectively thousands of people happy within a production, but
Mm.
also we're allowed to be with people where, certainly when I'm working, I just know that, I can be myself. People kind of, we're very open as people to understanding what people bring to a production, what their
Yeah.
background might be, and being sensitive to that. And I think that's a really lovely quality. My goodness, you are Mr. Edinburgh. You've worked on Calendar Girls, Priscilla. What I thought was fantastic. You've had a huge involvement in the play The Kite Runner, Damien. I just wondered the experience. You worked on Neighbours in Australia, but what's that experience like working in New York on Broadway? Touring the States. Is that wonderful for you. Was there anything within that project that surprised you?
It was a brilliant experience. It's different and sometimes in surprising ways as well. Over there, theatre is held in such high esteem. Like it's really respected and everyone knows about it. Like it's really looked on as something very special, which sometimes isn't always the case in the UK, I think. So that was number one in the first place. And then also we hear so much over here about sort of equity and the rules and you
Yeah.
can't touch anything, and all of that, all of which is true. And so there are things. Remember one of the most bizarre. This is such a small thing, but it had a real impact on me. So in rehearsals, the rule is there is a 5 minute break every hour, or every 2 hours you can defer that 5 minute into the second hour for a 10 minute break, but you can't go longer than 2 hours without that.
Oh my
It's like,
goodness.
okay, makes sense, sure. And works out the same because we have every 3 hours you need a 15 minute. So
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
same amount of time. It makes such a difference because when you are in a rehearsal process, the moment you break, number one, everyone wants to chat to you. They all literally go like that with questions, and they're
Yeah.
all legitimate
Uh,
questions. They're all sort of like something about it might be an actor clarifying something you've just done. It might be a stage manager just going, "Could you just explain this?" Wardrobe going, "Cool, I need to grab this person." Listen, whatever. You just have a mountain of people immediately come to you. So automatically, I go, so like, we'll do the 10 minute option every time. So, but throw into that you want to grab a cup of coffee, you
yeah.
want to go to the loo. We were also in the heat of summer rehearsing this, so you might even want a quick burst of fresh air. 10 minutes is not enough. You can't do it. Literally. And I would find myself like just going, oh, if only we had 15 minutes, because you can put all of it into 15 minutes. And so it's such a
Uh,
weird little quirky thing, but had me desperate for those. And then in the theatre, the other thing was there is no collective warm up. So your actors arrive at the theatre for their half-hour call,
oh my goodness.
really, and you don't have that sort of shared coming together. And so it was you had to really navigate a way of going, well, how do I do this? How do I speak to the company as a whole? And the Broadway audiences and community were amazing, and the the noise that comes from them in a great way. It's like they will let you know how they are feeling in this show. And every moment, if they find it funny, they will laugh. If they find it sad, you will hear them. You might even get audible responses to things. Like there's a bit of a bombshell moment in Act Two, and it's quite a still, quiet moment. And I remember one night, sort of, this happened, and this voice came out of nowhere to go, "Holy shit!" It's just like they will let you know what they feel at every time. There's something that is actually pretty thrilling about that. Like the
yeah.
atmosphere in the audience is so huge. And it was really lucky to. So I spent 10 weeks on Broadway in one long stint, went back twice over that run, and then the next year got to go out again. So 2 years later, got to go out again for the US tour. And so saw it in several other places as well. And just seeing sort of that reaction, but also in these incredible auditoriums. So I think we went for the US tour. We did our previews and our tech period in San Jose in a lovely 700 seat theatre. Beautiful, gorgeous reaction. Move to Tempe to open it properly, and suddenly we're in a 3,500 seater
Oh, goodness.
where the balcony alone is the capacity of our Broadway house.
Oh my word.
So you're just like, wow, look at this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, next time you direct me, Damien, I'm definitely not going to head over to you when we cut for a break. I'm going to let you go for a little tinkle, go and grab your latte. So apologies for all the years I have done that, because I know I have. At the end of a day like that, a busy day in the rehearsal room or putting a show in on, you've arrived at a new venue, say, your head must be full of so many facets of information, the story, the actor's welfare, just getting the production on. What's your go-to to decompress at the end of a long day?
Yeah, well, sort of like a relatively recent discover for me in life, sort of like of the last 3 years or so, is I've discovered that I really love the gym. And particularly actually in those periods where life is really, really busy and sort of you are in that tech bit particularly, one of the greatest things I found is then sort of going into the gym late at night, it's empty, and just having an hour or so where you go, right, here we go, put some music on, have a workout, and you just kind of completely take yourself out of that day. Maybe sort of go onto the cross trainer, watch an episode of something as you do it, and it just gives you a bit of, here we go, there we go, and don't need to think about anything right now. You can just
Yeah.
empty it. And I always find sort of it's a great, much as sort of like you're doing this sort of hard work, it's also sort of like actually this great unwinder, and
Oh,
just lets everything melt away. And then it may be that after that, I go back and I do a bit more work, but my head is just so much clearer having had that little gap. And so I end up doing things in a much quicker burst than I would have had I just tried to do it straight away. That's a
yeah.
great leveler for me.
It's almost like a little reset, isn't it? I guess just a little
Completely.
period to yourself where you're just resetting and recharging the batteries.
And also just allowing a bit of time for yourself, which can often be quite low on the list when you're in a busy production period. And it just sort of gives you a little bit of time for you every day. And that's really nice. I used to find that whenever I was working on a show, in my early days, I'd get quite immersed in it and I wouldn't do much else apart from it. And I've discovered that actually, what is also really good for me, if I'm in a normal rehearsal period, is actually going to the theatre as much as I can during that period. So rather than sort of finishing rehearsals, going home, slogging away on it, I
Yeah.
actually find it really stimulating to go and watch something else. And it just kind of keeps my creative energy really, really intact.
Well, I really admire your energy levels. My goodness, Australia, America. If there was one show where you had quite a tough day, just a tough day with life, is there one show where there's a score that would just lift you?
I have a playlist. So this is a bit of a cheat answer. I have a playlist called Musical Heaven, which is
Oh,
sort of for if I need a bit of a boost, or just a bit of variety, I stick it on shuffle. And it basically has like about 14 hours of musical theatre on it. Like all of my favorite songs, things, and they could be any mood, but just my favorite songs from every musical I could find in this playlist. And I just put that on, and you never know what you're going to get next, which is great. I mean, within that sort of, I think there's some guaranteed songs that get you doing things like I Got Rhythm, particularly
yeah.
that wonderful version, the first version with Ruthie Henschel and so on.
Oh my
But I Got
goodness.
Rhythm on
Yeah, yeah.
that extended dance break, you will end up tapping. Martin Guerre, Welcome Home, you will end up stomping.
Yeah, yeah.
Hairspray, you'll do armography. Sister Act,
Oh,
you'll do
yeah.
hairography. It's like spread the love around, you know? They're just such good, feel good tunes that you just get compelled to do something. And that always puts you in a good mood.
Yeah. Well, I've mastered the art of armography. I think a lot of choreographers are like, Ben, don't forget the legs as well. I'm like, no, I'm Mr. Tickle on stage, all arms, go go gadget arms. And I imagine super busy time of year for you, Damien. You know, your involvement with artistic producer at UK Productions. My goodness, what a fantastic array of shows you put on every year around the UK. Is it busy? It looks like another exciting season ahead.
It is. So this is a bit of an unusual year in one sense because UKP don't have any tours out this year, which has been lovely just to sort of the last few years we've been really fortunate to have some great stuff out and but it means that your focus is always sort of on what's happening then. It's and you have an ever-growing list of things that you want to look at or refine or do or longer arching things that kind of escape just one production and you just never have the time to do it properly. And so it's been lovely to have a bit of room to breathe with that respect, but at the same time, certainly not quiet. So we have our 11 pantos on this year. And then immediately, when the last, well, one panto is still in operation, but we go into rehearsals for our next tour of The Beekeeper of Aleppo. And we've got another potential tour next year as well. So right now, my week has been quite varied. And I think in the last 24 hours, I've had three meetings about shows for 2026 or 2027 and another
My goodness.
several things sort of like going alongside that. And then Panto is every week of the year. You know, it's a joyous thing. It's a rough guide of thumb. So for Panto this year, the productions that are on in 25 into 26, we started planning and work on those last September. And so it's just kind of like this rolling thing. And we have done a lot of casting this year already. There's been a lot of lovely announcements and more to
Yeah.
come. I'm I'm very hot on the fact that we if we see people that we like, we remember. And what is a nice position to be in is that this year, last year, the year before, we've actually been able to go to someone that we saw audition for us the previous year. We didn't have something for then, but this year we've been able to just give them a straight offer because we've seen them audition. We know
Yeah,
we love
yeah.
them. We just didn't have the right pieces to put together last year. Whereas this year we can just go, yeah, here you go. So uh and I love that aspect of casting, because pretty much everyone you see, you want to give a job to. They could do it. Remember, the second professional show that I worked on, the Nationals Tour of Honk, was directed by Julia Mackenzie. And she said to me that 80% of your job as a director is casting the show. Because if you cast the show correctly, most of your work is done for you. And I sort of got what she meant, but it took me a few years to realize it fully. And it was a production of Snoopy that I was doing at the Edinburgh Festival. And I just remember about a week into it going, we're having such a lovely time and the show is looking so brilliant, but I feel like I'm hardly doing anything here because these people are so good. And it was when I fully understood what she meant. It's that it's not just about finding good people. Everyone you see is a good person and they could do the role. It's about if you find the person that matches exactly your vision for that show and how that character fits into it, then they take on the life of it. And it should always be that the actor knows their character better than you because what it does is allow you to be in control of the overall picture. And essentially, as a director, what you are is it's like you're at a sound desk and everyone is on a fader, and you know, right, in this scene, we just want to turn that fader up a little bit and give a little bit more of this person here.
Yeah.
And now we need to take that down and bring more out of that. And you're able to look at it in such a more balanced way and with so much clarity if you have the right actors in the right roles doing the stuff.
Damian, from first meeting you many years ago, seeing your career fly, it just doesn't surprise me. You're so wonderful, you're so kind, you're so talented. And
You're very kind and generous with your words here. It's funny, we have done several shows now together, and what I remember about you and that first one is just your wonderful enthusiasm and also sort of your absolute warmth towards everyone in that company. And that's always been true of every show we've ever done since together. And, it's always a joy to work with you.
oh, well, it's certainly been a joy to chat to you today on Benjy's Cafe podcast. Damian, keep smiling. You're a beautiful energy. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Damian. What a talented and super chap. Don't forget, a fresh new episode of Benjy's Cafe podcast drops every Tuesday. Just find us wherever you get your podcasts. Give Benjy's Cafe a follow so every episode gets sent straight to your phone. A quick favour to ask, the British Podcast Awards are on the horizon, so if you can, please vote for Benjy's Cafe podcast for the Listener's Choice Award. Just visit BritishPodcastAwards.com/voting. Pop in Benjy's Cafe and bingo. Done. Thank you, you're all brilliant. What a good bunch we are. Next week I'm joined by the actor and handsome devil, Richard Meek. I'll get the kettle on. Have a great day.